People often ask me, how did you keep a relationship for so long? Was it love, loyalty, or blind hope? And every time I try to answer, I realize it was never just one thing. It was a mix of love and fear, peace and pain, comfort and confusion. It was holding on when letting go would have been easier. It was believing that love alone could fix what was slowly breaking. Psychology says we stay not because we do not see the truth, but because our hearts take longer than our minds to let go. Chapter 1. When Love Feels Like Home. Love feels. It begins beautifully, as most stories do, with laughter that feels familiar, conversations that make time disappear, and a warmth that feels like safety. Psychology calls this attachment formation. Your brain starts associating their presence with comfort, with peace, with belonging. You find pieces of yourself in their habits, their words, their chaos, and before long, your identity begins to entwine with theirs. It does not feel like dependence, it feels like destiny. You start building your life around their existence, not because you have to, but because it feels natural. Love becomes your safe place, and you convince yourself that losing them would mean losing stability. But the truth is, sometimes comfort is the first stage of captivity. Chapter 2. When Effort Becomes a Habit. Love begins to demand more. Small misunderstandings turn into long silences, and yet you keep trying. Psychology calls this the reciprocity trap. When one partner gives more than the other in hopes of restoring balance, you start explaining your feelings, softening your tone, adjusting your boundaries. Because you think compromise is maturity, you tell yourself that real love takes work. And while that is true, real love does not mean constant fixing. You mistake tolerance for strength, patience for proof, and slowly, you teach yourself to accept the bare minimum. You normalize their distance, their coldness, their inconsistency, all in the name of trying. You start carrying the relationship alone and convince yourself it is love, when really, it is fear of losing the connection you built your peace around. Chapter 3. When Fear Becomes the Glue. There comes a point where the thought of leaving feels heavier than the pain of staying. Psychology calls this loss aversion. The fear of losing something familiar outweighs the desire for something better. You tell yourself that no relationship is perfect, that every couple struggles. But deep down you know, this is not just struggle, it is stagnation. You fear the unknown, the silence after goodbye, the empty bed, the long nights where no one texts to ask if you are okay. So you stay. You keep convincing yourself that this is just a phase, that they will change, that you will change, that love will fix it all. But what you do not realize is, fear has replaced love as the glue that is keeping you there. Chapter 4. When you start losing yourself. Somewhere in between their moods and your apologies, you start disappearing. Psychology calls this identity erosion, a gradual loss of self in relationships where emotional imbalance exists. You stop doing the little things you loved. You stop seeing people who made you feel alive. Your world becomes smaller, revolving around how they feel. You start measuring your worth through their reactions, your happiness through their attention, and your peace through their approval. It is subtle at first, but soon you wake up and realize that the version of you that used to laugh easily, dream freely, and stand confidently has become quiet, cautious, and tired. And yet you stay, because you think loving them means losing yourself. Chapter 5. When Hope Turns into a Cycle. There is always that one moment that makes you stay a little longer. A kind gesture, a soft apology, a promise that sounds sincere. Psychology calls this intermittent reinforcement, the same psychological principle behind addiction. It is the cycle of pain and comfort, withdrawal and reward, that keeps you emotionally hooked. Every small act of kindness reignites your hope. Every soft moment makes you forget the chaos. You convince yourself things are improving. But soon the cycle resets. You start to crave the highs more than you fear the lows, and love becomes something you chase instead of something you feel. Chapter 6. When you confuse love with duty. After a while, leaving feels like betrayal. You start telling yourself that staying is the right thing to do. Psychology calls this emotional loyalty bias. You stay not because you are happy, but because you feel responsible for their healing, their peace, their future. You become the caretaker, the fixer, the one who holds everything together. And the longer you do it, the harder it becomes to imagine a life where you do not. You convince yourself that love means sacrifice, and you end up sacrificing your joy, your freedom, your identity. But here is the truth. Love does not mean losing yourself to prove your devotion. It means choosing balance over burnout. Chapter 7. When reality breaks the illusion. One day, you finally see it clearly, not through emotion, but through exhaustion. Psychology calls this emotional burnout. It is the moment your nervous system stops romanticizing inconsistency. You stop defending what drains you. You stop rewriting red flags into lessons. You stop pretending it is love when it is just attachment. The truth hits softly, not like a storm, but like a quiet dawn. You realize that love without respect is chaos, affection without effort is manipulation, and connection without growth is a cage. Chapter 8. When letting go feels like healing. Letting go is not instant. It is not clean. It is not heroic. It is a process, a slow rewiring of your heart and mind. Psychology says healing is not about forgetting. It is about reprogramming. You start to unlearn the patterns that kept you trapped, the way you chased closure, the way you ignored your needs to keep peace. You stop seeking validation from the person who caused your pain, and you start finding comfort in your own silence. Every lonely night becomes a lesson. Every tear becomes proof of growth. One morning, you wake up and realize that peace feels unfamiliar, only because you spent so long in chaos. Chapter 9. When you return to yourself. You start doing small things again, things that make you feel like you. Psychology calls this self-reintegration, the restoration of identity after emotional disconnection. You start loving your own company, rediscovering hobbies, dreams, and goals that had been buried under compromise. You begin setting boundaries, not as walls, but as gates of self-respect. You start seeing your past not as failure, but as training for the kind of love that will not require you to shrink. Chapter 10. When love finds you again, when love finds you. Eventually, love finds its way back. Not the kind that breaks you, but the kind that meets you where you are. Psychology says we attract what we are ready for. When you heal, your energy changes, your standards rise, and suddenly, the love you once begged for now meets you effortlessly. It does not rush. It does not confuse. It does not demand. It understands. You no longer chase love. You choose it, with peace, with clarity, with confidence. So how did I keep a relationship for so long? I kept it because I believed love could fix anything, because I thought effort was the cure for distance, and patience was the proof of love. But psychology taught me that love alone is not enough. Peace matters, respect matters, and alignment matters. Sometimes the hardest truth is realizing that love can exist without longevity. That two people can care deeply but still be wrong for each other. You learn that staying too long does not make you loyal. It makes you afraid. And leaving does not mean you stopped loving. It means you finally started loving yourself. The real strength was never in how long I stayed. It was in the courage it took to walk away when I knew staying was slowly killing who I was. And that is the truth about keeping a relationship for so long. It is never just about love. It is about lessons, growth, and timing. Sometimes you hold on until you finally understand that peace is the greatest proof of love. And when you find it within yourself, you stop searching for it in someone else.